Good morning. Good morning. Just waiting a few minutes for everybody to come in. This is our webinar this morning on the certificate program, our partnership with ASU, Sustainable Tourism for Native Nations and Communities. We're just going to wait here just a minute or two to let everybody come in, and then we'll get started with the program. Okay. We'll just wait a few more seconds before we get started. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Or I guess it could be afternoon somewhere on the East Coast. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started this morning. I know everybody's time is valuable, and we are going to be posting this afterwards. So those that were unable to join us today can access our video online at our website, AIANTA.org. So greetings, everybody, and welcome to today's session. It is the information session on our Sustainable Tourism for Native Nations and Communities certificate. It is a partnership between ASU and AIANTA, and so very pleased that you're here with us. My name is Sherry Rupert, and I am the CEO for the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association. I am Paiute and Washoe from the great state of Nevada, and have been with AIANTA now for several years in many different capacities. And for a little bit about AIANTA, AIANTA has served as the only national organization dedicated to advancing cultural heritage tourism in Native nations and communities across the United States. Established by tribes for tribes to address inequities in the tourism system, AIANTA is a 501c3 national nonprofit governed by an all-Native board of directors and serves as a united voice for the $15.7 billion Native hospitality sector. AIANTA's successful legislative work led to the industry-changing Native American Tourism and Improving Visitor Experience Act, or NATIVE Act, funding in 2018, as Indian country tourism was recognized through federal appropriations via NATIVE Act implementation. AIANTA's mission is to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values while helping American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian businesses become market and export ready for domestic and international markets. Tribes who are looking to start or expand their cultural tourism footprint can find resources at AIANTA.org, and visitors interested in learning more about Native culture can visit nativeamerica.travel. We want the discussion this morning to be as informational as possible. So we are asking that you put your questions in the chat or questions and answers, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Professor Kathleen Anderett, who is the coordinator for the Sustainable Tourism Certificate at ASU. Works up, Kathleen.
Hi, nice to see you all this morning.
I'm going to continue before we start. At ASU, Kathleen is an instructor for Introduction to Travel and Tourism program planning, and research methods. Her research focuses on the tourism experience from the perspective of both visitors and residents, particularly as it applies to sustainable tourism. She has done research with a diversity of organizations and agencies at the federal and state level, including Navajo Nation, National Park Service, Arizona Office of Tourism, and the Arizona Department of Transportation, as well as many other individual organizations and communities. Kathleen is assisting AIANTA in launching this year's Sustainable Tourism for Native Nations and Communities certificate, and will contribute by instructing portions of the Sustainable Destination Planning, Development, and Management modules along the Sustainable Tourism Strategic Plans module. At this time, I'll turn it over to you, Kathleen.
Right, thanks very much. So I appreciate you all being here today. We have a lovely rainy day here in Phoenix, and we're all happy because that doesn't happen very often and we need it a lot. So it's good to see you all. And what I'd like to do today is just share kind of an overview of our certificate and the people who are teaching it. We do it a little bit different than some of the other programs are. We actually have a whole team of people who teach our certificate, and one or more people are involved in each module. So I'll introduce those people to you. And I also want to leave plenty of time for questions in case you have them at the end. So we'll try to keep this overview to, kind of a limited amount of time so that we do have time for questions. So as Sherry mentioned, I'm Kathy Anderek. I've been at ASU. This is my 30th year. And so I've been here a long time, and I started here, when I was 12. That's why I've been here so long. So I'm coordinating this certificate program, and we started it last year, and we've made a few modifications like we always do for this year. But I'm also serving as the interim director of our Center for Sustainable Tourism. We've been trying to find a regular director and haven't been successful yet. So I'm serving as the interim for this year. So nice to see you all. So let's go ahead and get started with what our program is offering. So the purpose of our certificate, which has the rather long name of Sustainable Tourism for Native Nations and Communities, is to give the people who are participating kind of an overview of sustainable tourism and how you might be able to work on your planning and development programs in your communities, taking a sustainable tourism approach. So we're really trying to just give a pretty broad overview, of what sustainable tourism is, the good things about it. There's bad things about any kind of tourism too, but how you might be able to use it to enhance your tourism. So our dates for this spring are essentially, it's the second half of our spring semester. So that starts March 11th through April 26th. So that's the time frame that we're looking at. It's through our Center for Sustainable Tourism. So again, we developed this in conjunction with AIANTA to help just provide another professional development opportunity for AIANTA members as well as non-members. And our center, our mission statement for our center is to seek to examine the role and contribution of tourism in the social, cultural, environmental, and economic well-being of communities. And I put the link here for you if you're interested in looking a little bit more at our website. It needs a couple of updates, things like websites always do. But feel free to look at that and see a little bit more about our center, because we do this professional development program. We do some other kinds of things too. We have graduate students working with us, and we do quite a bit of research to assist communities learning more typically about their visitors. So we recently finished up a project for Navajo Nation. We did a visitor study for them this past summer, and we're getting the report done for that. But we're also doing a couple of projects that are in progress right now for the Park Service. So we do quite a few different things related to both tourism, but as well as like outdoor recreation and protected areas. So we have expertise in that as well. So first of all, why should you even study sustainable tourism? There's a lot of, I guess, formal definitions of sustainable tourism. The UN World Tourism Organization has a definition, and a lot of different organizations do. We do a lot of work with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council. They have a definition that's kind of a formal definition, but the way I really think of sustainable tourism is that it helps a community gain the benefits that tourism can have, but mitigating the negative consequences. So it really has that focus on, getting the most out of the tourism industry, but protecting the environment, protecting culture, protecting the social fabric of the community. And we also think of it not as being just like its own thing. It's, sustainable tourism a lot of times is kind of presented as a silo, but it's really not. It's really just part of contributing to a sustainable community. So tourism is economic development, but it's also community development. So that's really the way that we tend to think of it, as being a part of a community's overall activity, from an economic as well as a social perspective. And part of community and economic development, is thinking about the environmental, cultural, and social concerns that residents have. So sustainable tourism is trying to take all of those things into account. And it can benefit communities by having these benefits that accrue to your community, but that is also appropriate for your place and the people who live there. So one of the things sustainable tourism does that a lot of tourism development doesn't really do is it frequently involves a fairly considerable amount of community and resident input into what's happening, so that folks in the community generally are feeling, or at least most, I guess not everybody always feels that way, that they're feeling comfortable with what's going on. Because tourism can kind of be like an in-your-face industry, and I mean that kind of literally sometimes, with not all tourists being very well behaved. It's really important that people in a community feel okay about this tourism development and what's going on, and understand that how it will benefit them, but there's also going to be some costs involved. They basically you just kind of have to put up with. And sustainable tourism helps manage all of that, and try to focus on the beneficial aspects of tourism, and keep some of those negative kinds of things from happening. So that's one of the main reasons it's important to kind of focus on sustainable tourism. It also is kind of the wave of the future, as we see more and more communities struggling with what we call over tourism now. And that term is pretty new, but the concept of too many visitors in one place is not new. And I imagine some of you have had that experience before. So sustainable tourism, I don't know that it's a solution for that, but it's part of the solution for some of these problems that we see going on. So it tends to be the direction that people are moving in the tourism industry. So the certificate will have 7 modules plus an introductory module. And typically there's one module each week. The introductory module is in the first week. We also have a final project that's optional, and there's a few choices of projects that you can do. And we'll provide some feedback on those if you decide you want to do it. So you'll see more about what those options are, if you decide to enroll in the tourism program. So we do go for the 7-week period. And again, it's basically consistent with the second half of our spring semester, because that's when our faculty are around. 1 module per week. And each module tends to require 5 to 6 hours of effort. So that's what you could plan on during your week. You could probably spend less on that if you just listened to some of the lectures and didn't focus on the reading as much. And you could also spend a lot more than that, because most of us in our modules have included, a lot of extra resources and reading that you could look at if you wanted to. And some of that you could also just, get and download or mark the web page, to save for later. But there's usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours of, I guess we call general course content that, some of it is, kind of lecture kinds of things. We also have a few, guest speakers in there, so some of that will be part of that. There's also self-guided reading and assignments to do. So each module has one or more assignments just to help you think a little bit more about the content for that module and that week. And it's obviously it's offered as pass-fail. The only implication to pass-fail really is that if you don't, complete a certain percentage, then we won't necessarily award the certificate. But grades are not really particularly relevant here since it's professional development. We just, provide you a grade if you want to call it that and some feedback on what you're doing. So one of the things that's important to remember about this is that even though we have one module each week, you can really do your week, your work anytime in that week. This program is what we call asynchronous. It means that things are not scheduled as a particular time. So we don't say, we're going to have this class during this 2-hour period on, Monday afternoon. It's recorded, and then you can really do your work anytime during that week. So it makes it a lot more flexible. So these are what the modules are. The module, we call it module 0. But it's just kind of an introduction to the program, an overview of the course, what the requirements are in your faculty. And then the final project, which normally is something you may work on kind of for the whole time, is optional, but it's something that you could do if you wanted to. And for example, one of the main projects we have that we also go over during the tourism planning class is doing a community assessment to figure out where you are in your community and then, kind of where you may need to be going from a tourism perspective. And then module 1 is just an introduction to sustainable tourism. So that's the foundations of understanding sustainable tourism. So you'll learn some of the key terms and like any field, there's jargon involved in tourism, and even in sustainable tourism, there's even more. So the key terminology that we use, kind of the major actors, because we're not only looking at people in tourism, but also people in the community, government, and there's a lot of different actors involved in the development of sustainable tourism and some of the current global contexts. I seem to be having a difficulty with some words this morning. So, because this is it really is a global phenomenon, and things essentially around the whole world are impacting what's going on in tourism at any time. So we'll look at how sustainable tourism is defined, what exactly that term means, some of the key concepts of sustainability, including things like trade-offs, because ultimately that's what sustainability is all about, is trading off things and essentially compromising. Systems dynamics, because again, it's a system, tourism is a system and a lot of different players are involved. Things like long-term development, stakeholder collaboration, like I mentioned, involving stakeholders is extremely important in sustainable tourism. It's really, a critical part of that. And how all of those things apply to sustainable tourism. In module 2, we're looking at tourism and biodiversity. So a lot of tourism occurs in protected areas, including on a lot of lands in your communities. And so how does tourism help with biodiversity protection? It can definitely have a negative impact, but it can help with protection too. So we'll also look at the economic advancement of communities with its respect to protected areas, and opportunities for citizens to recreate and continue their connections with the natural environment at the same time we're developing tourism in some of these areas. So we also help students identify and understand alternative strategies to mitigate some of those environmental, cultural, and social impacts that are associated with traditional forms of tourism in and around protected areas. So we'll be looking at some of those things in the tourism and biodiversity module. In module 3, we're looking at inclusive and responsible tourism. And inclusivity has become a much more important aspect recently in tourism and other things. So, embracing diversity. So we'll look more at inclusive and responsible tourism in module 3. And we'll start with introducing the concepts of inclusive and responsible tourism, and also discuss some of the relevance of heritage justice to inclusive development, because justice is a major part of inclusion and diversity, and embracing those aspects of the world and into tourism. So module 4 focuses a bit on marketing and social media, and I know that many of you are involved in the marketing of your communities. So we do just kind of a little bit of an overview of marketing and social media. And this is probably as much for people who don't have much of a background in marketing yet, but it's always a good idea to review those things, even if you do. So marketing is obviously a critical part of tourism development. It allows a match between tourism resources and the right visitors. A lot of people think of marketing as just trying to attract more people, but that's really not what it is. It really is trying to match what you offer and what you're willing to make available to visitors with the people who will appreciate that. So again, it's matching your tourism resources with what you define as the right visitors. That's really what marketing is. It's not just attracting more and more and more people. So this module will cover some basic marketing concepts, the components of a marketing plan, and include the use of social media, because social media is becoming just increasingly more important, especially among certain groups of visitors, and they use it pretty often. And this is kind of an interesting little factoid for you. I was just kind of looking at the data we collected for Navajo Nation, and one of the things that I found that was being used pretty extensively, and this was just a very small segment of what I was looking at, especially by international visitors, was actually YouTube, and that's the first time I'd really seen that. So people are using, different kinds of information media than they used to. The brochure just isn't really used nearly as often. So in modules 5 and 6, there are kind of linked modules because these things really go together. So we look at sustainable destination planning, development, and management. So sustainable tourism requires, thoughtful planning, development, and management. That's one of the biggest aspects of sustainable tourism is good planning. So we'll focus a couple of modules on these things that are linked together. So it does an overview of sustainable tourism planning, development, and management that are all necessary for a sustainable tourism sector. And that is where we include a community tourism assessment tool that you could use to begin the process of planning in your community, and just gather some information so kind of your strengths and weaknesses and where to go kind of from here. Then module 7, we're sharing some sustainable tourism strategic plans, and we have a few in there that are pretty recent, and they range and are done in different ways. So you can see a variety of ways in which they've been done, ranging from the plans that Hawaii has done to some work we did in Sedona, Arizona, to some work we did on the border region in southern Arizona and northern Sonora, Mexico. So they really range the gamut of different kinds of plans, and so you can see a variety of options in the ways some plans have been done. And then we share a few others with you too that may be helpful when you start working on a strategic plan of your own. So your instructors, let me introduce them kind of briefly. There's me, yours truly. I'm, again, the coordinator of this certificate and the interim director of our center. And, I teach some classes like Introduction to Tourism, which in a program planning class, which focuses on mostly on like doing recreation programs and a research methods. So I tend to really focus from a research perspective on tourism experiences in sustainable tourism. And I've worked with a lot of different organizations on that. So the parts that I teach in this class are part of the sustainable destination planning and development modules, as well as part of the sustainable tourism module. So I'm involved in kind of the back end of things. Kelly Bricker is one of our faculty members, and we have some programs in China, and she's the director of that. So she's actually pretty famous in this whole world of sustainable tourism, has been really involved in it for a pretty long time. So she's authored books, including one on how tourism contributes to the Millennium Development Goals. So she's on the board of the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, and we have a partnership with them and do quite a bit of work with them. So she's quite involved in protected areas too. So that's the module that she teaches, is the tourism and biodiversity module. So we're pretty lucky to have her on our faculty here to be part of this certificate. Christine Buzinde is the director of our school. She teaches things like marketing and advanced tourism and recreation studies, and she looks at community development through tourism, and she's done quite a bit of work even internationally related to marginalized communities and how tourism can be beneficial to those communities. So she's kind of been all over the place, working in a lot of different places, and so she teaches part of the marketing module for our certificate program. Deepak Chopra teaches tourism marketing and cultural tourism, as well as some other things. And she looks at like smart marketing and strategic marketing from a research perspective, as well as ethical practices in tourism and some of the things related to social capital. So she's looked at a lot of different things, especially related around the area of heritage tourism. And she does quite a bit of economic impact work as well. So she recently finished up a project here for a major event in our area that did an economic impact analysis. So she teaches the inclusive and responsible tourism module. Rebecca Goodman is the coordinator for our Master of Sustainable Tourism degree. And so actually Sherry's husband is a graduate of that program, if you ever want to ask him about it. She also teaches sustainable communities, sustainable tourism and sustainable thinking in some of those. And she also has a lot of experience in development of curriculum, and she's led a lot or developed a lot of our study abroad programs, both here as well as internationally. So she and I have taken students to Guatemala, and she and other faculty have gone to Australia and Fiji, and she helped develop a program. And she hasn't gone herself because she has a small child, so it has a little bit of limitations in leaving. But she helped develop our program in Kenya that went last summer, and then I and another faculty member will be taking that program to Kenya this summer, and she teaches our introductory module on sustainable tourism. Ujin Lee is our master degree and PhD degree coordinator, and she teaches international tourism as one of her classes, and she does a lot of work related to information technology and things like the MICE market, right, and the meeting market, and related to tourism marketing. So she does some of the cool stuff recently with one of her grad students looking at consumer acceptance of robots as service providers in tourism. So she and her student actually won quite a lot of best paper awards at conferences for that. So she teaches part of the marketing module, specifically the social media part. And Gian Niopani teaches sustainable tourism and some other things. And he is particularly involved in conservation related things through tourism. And he researches a lot of topics including some things related to Indigenous people globally. And he's got a book published kind of related to heritage tourism. And he teaches part of the Sustainable Tourism Strategic Plans model. And finally is Nick Wise, and he focuses on tourism planning in his teaching. And that's also the module he teaches along with me, is the Destination Planning and Development and Management module. So he teaches a number of things, and he does actually quite a bit of work and research in events. So if you ever have an interest in event management, we have actually quite a lot of expertise in that, in our school, but Nick's done some research related to that. So that's our faculty that teach this. So you kind of get a lot of bang for your buck and virtually meeting a lot of different people who have expertise in some of the areas that we're covering in our certificate program. So the fees for this is, it's $2,450 for AIANTA members and a little bit more for non-members. But if 3 or more of the people in your department or of your organization get together, then you can get a 10% discount. And you can register now through AIANTA's website. I think if it's not live now, it will be very shortly after this webinar. So you just go in there now, and you can either do one of a couple of things. You can pay now with a credit card, but you can also pay later by choosing an invoice option. And you can register, now or later, either one. And Sherry will probably talk about this when I finish up, but I think there are going to be some scholarships for this program. So, so keep that in mind too. So the last day to register is March 4th, which is mainly because we need to get some things done administratively before we start the program on 11th. So, so March 11th is our start date. And get registered by the 4th, and we'll send you information on how to access the program. And what we do is we add you on essentially as an affiliate with ASU. So you get things like an ASU email account and all different kinds of things when you become an affiliate with us that lasts for a while. So even though this is just this program, there's actually some other benefits you can get just being an affiliate with ASU for about a year. So our registration will be done by the 4th. And then one of my colleagues who's quite good at this, she's kind of our curriculum person and sort of our head student services person in our school, will get you all, entered into our system, and you'll get information on your email. And another reason for doing this early is because sometimes there's a few interesting, weird glitches in the system for one reason or another. If you've been affiliated with ASU, you might already have an email address, and we've noticed that has caused a couple of glitches. So it gives us a little bit of time to kind of get some of that stuff figured out, because a lot of times we have to go to someone else for help with that. So so that our start date will be March 11th. And again, within the weeks of the module, you can kind of do your work anytime during those weeks. So this leaves us plenty of time for questions. And I wanted to leave us lots of time in case you do have questions about the program or about getting registered or anything you want to ask Sherry about the program. So let's go ahead and open it up for questions at this point.
Great. Thanks, Kathleen, for your presentation. That was chock full of information. And we do have a couple of questions from some of the attendees that I'll go ahead and moderate here. So one of the questions is this the same course or similar to the one AIANTA had with George Washington University? And I'll go ahead and start on that one. It is a different course. The one with George Washington University is on cultural heritage tourism. This one is a focus on sustainable tourism.
There are probably some topics that overlap a little bit, but probably not very much.
Right.
I've looked at what they teach in that certificate primarily so we're not duplicative. But I think even the topics that overlap a little bit, we probably, go at them from a different perspective.
Yeah. And it's always good to have a couple of touch points, right? So you can retain that information.
We'll have students say, wow, I heard this in another class. And I always tell them, well, if you learned it all, then you'd be all be getting A's and you're not. So, a little bit of repetition is never actually a bad thing. It actually helps you learn things better.
Right. The other question in this one is, what is the difference? Is there a difference between sustainable tourism and geotourism?
Well, some of that depends on how you define geotourism. Some people, and I think you're defining it the way I do. Some people define geotourism as tourism in geologic areas, but I think you're thinking about it more in the like National Geographic geotourism slant, um, which is
Uh, they have a definition here. Geotourism is defined as tourism that sustains or enhances the distinctive geographical character of a place, its environment, heritage, aesthetics, culture, and the well-being of its residents.
right. So you're thinking about it the way I think about it too. And it's somewhat different. There are some overlaps, but the main difference between sustainable tourism and geotourism is really heavily focused on place. It's place-based. And sustainable tourism, I would say, is a little more broad than that. And actually was pretty involved in this geotourism stuff when it was first started. And there's the National Geographic geotourism maps, right? They have a bunch of those, and there's one for southern Arizona and Sonora, so the Sonoran Desert. And I was actually on the committee that worked on that, so I'm pretty familiar with what it is. But they're similar, but not 100% the same. I would say that if you learn a lot of the concepts in one, then you've learned a lot of the concepts in the other. But there's a lot of things that have this tendency to overlap a little bit, but we call them different things. Geotourism, responsible tourism, sustainable tourism. A lot of those things have really similar, interests and real similar goals of what they're trying to accomplish in communities.
Great. Okay, another question, Kathleen. So Malia is seeking clarification. She wants to know, are the classes only offered as recorded, or are they conducted live? And if you miss it, it's recorded and you can watch it later. Just trying to understand if everyone is watching a playback version, and if so, how does one interact or ask the instructors or speakers questions?
Yeah, they're only recorded, but if you want to interact with the speakers, we could set up times to do that. We've just generally found that with all of the different time zones, it's just really hard to set up times that work for a lot of people. Especially for us in Arizona, we'll be 3 hours different than anybody on Eastern time because we don't change the daylight savings time, which also confuses everybody. But we found that just generally an asynchronous method is better, but we can do all kinds of interaction through email, or we can do discussion boards if that's something you're interested in doing. So we do this, a lot like we teach our online classes where there's assignments, and we'll provide feedback on those, but it is all essentially online recorded, but we can do interaction in other kinds of ways.
Great, thank you. And Rachel is asking if the presentation would be sent out to participants, and Sherry responded that the presentations will be sent out to all registrants along with a video link. So you will all be getting this presentation. And then let's see. Yeah, we have ASU's #1 fan on here. I see. ASU #1. ASU #1 in the US for sustainable tourism. He says the entire ASU sustainable tourism faculty is well published. Let's see. Marla has a question. When will we know if there will be scholarships and who could qualify for a scholarship? Okay, well, that was going to be my next comments. I am very pleased to announce right here, you guys are the first to hear it, that we are offering 5 scholarships for this certificate program. And we're going to be putting up the link to the application on our website, hopefully by the end of today. So be looking for that on ianta.org, and you can go over to education and then down to the ASU page. And that's where you can register for the class as well. So we'll put that up after the webinar today. And then Ben is asking, do you cover topics on regenerative tourism, especially the efforts in the state of Hawaii?
We do a little bit kind of indirectly because we actually do have some information specifically on Hawaii because they've been doing so much that incorporates the native Hawaiian perspective. So we're not really doing a module or specific content on regenerative tourism, but because we do include some of Hawaii's information in there, there's some of that content that is included, especially in, more in the reading side of things. But, that might be a good thing to include. I'm going to actually write that down as something that we might want to put in, not as a topic, but maybe as a reading or something like that. So I'm gonna actually write that down because it's becoming, again, it's another one of those things, regenerative tourism, that conceptually and with respect to its desired outcomes overlaps a lot with sustainable tourism. So it's a very appropriate thing to include in what we're doing. So thanks for that. It's a good idea.
Yeah, great. Well, Malia Sanders is on. She is from Hawaii, from the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association, and she's the regenerative tourism expert for Native Hawaiian tourism in Hawaii. And so she might be a good guest speaker.
Yeah, she might be. I'll be in touch. I'm sure I can find your email online somewhere. So
Well, yeah, and you can get it from us too, Kathleen. She's one of our board members.
Yeah, because we do have a few guest speakers in here, including Ben, actually. But it would be nice to have a couple of more. So I'll be in touch, and it would be really nice to have you, do a bit of the guest interview or guest talk for a little while. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Great. Amber says she's a 2001 ASU grad, recreation and tourism management. She said, Kathleen, you were one of her professors, and she's happy. And she's happy to see the collaboration between AIANTA and ASU. Great partnership.
And it's nice that you're on here, Amber. We like to try and keep in touch with our former students. She graduated quite a while ago.
Well, she's still a fan.
Yeah, good.
Let's see. If we do not register for this time frame, will there be another opportunity offered? And if so, when?
Well, so far, we've been offering it once a year.
Once a year in the spring.
Yeah, so same time next year.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, this is your chance, you guys. If you have any more questions, we have Kathleen here to answer them. And then Ben says, Kathleen, please check out the Hawaii Tourism Toolkit that Malia developed. It's posted on the HTA website.
Especially if it's new. I've looked at a lot of Hawaii stuff because there's so much going on there. So I'll look at that too, and we can link that in to
yeah, it's a great resource, definitely.
Quite a few things from Hawaii LinkedIn, and I just found some interviews that were done with several people, and one of your colleagues, Daniel, I've known for a long time. We're in the Travel and Tourism Research Association together. So,
Uh-huh.
so I talked to him about some of this. So, I'm aware of some of it from what I've talked to him about. So that you all are doing some really, really good things. They're probably, there's some other states that are doing a lot too, but Hawaii seems to be really, in a way, kind of taking this all to the next level.
Yeah, and Daniel is he's at the helm of HTA right now.
Yeah. Oh, he is.
Yeah. Yep.
I knew he was doing, he was in some role. He moved over from his consulting firm and so now he's, yeah, at the helm. That's great.
Yep. Yep. And then what kinds of examples of final projects have been shared?
We have a few things. So, a few people have done their own thing, which and just gotten feedback on it. So interestingly, Daniel's one of those. He kind of did his own project, which would be okay too. If you had something you wanted to work on and just get feedback on it, that would be great. We've also got a couple of different community assessments. One is something we developed, a really long time ago in Arizona when we still were doing more kind of in the, with rural communities. And it's a community assessment that you can do that looks at where you are now. And then you can then help that, to feed that into a tourism plan and action plan. Another one is more of a general, just kind of sustainability assessment and where you are now with sustainability. Another one is kind of a brief marketing plan. And a lot of people tend to think that marketing plans need to be huge, but you can do a basic marketing plan, in less pages if you want to think about it that way to at least get you started. So those are some of the things we have. But again, if you've got something, that you really want to work on and you'd just like to get some feedback, we can do that too.
Great. All right. Any other questions this morning? You all have been very active. Thank you for that. We appreciate the questions.
If you have anything, shoot me an email. It's on the website, I think, so you can find it there. But I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have that you think of a little bit later. I know I emailed someone, a couple days ago, had some questions, so we'll certainly do that. And I usually respond pretty quickly. And so absolutely do that if you think of anything else.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm gonna I think close out this morning with everybody. I want to thank everybody for joining us for this informational webinar. And Kathleen, I want to thank you for being here with us as well to share the information on this very important program. We're so thankful to have wonderful partners like you and ASU to ensure we're providing quality education and building our family of tourism professionals. I'm also was very excited to announce that AIANTA is going to be offering 5 scholarships. These are Native Act funds received through the Office of Indian Economic Development for this particular certificate. And we will be posting this opportunity on our website at aianta.org and promoting it through the Rupert Report and all of our social media channels. So be on the lookout for that information. And we also want you to save the date for 2 important events coming up. We have our Go International 2-day training that's going to be held here in Albuquerque on February 6th and 7th at the Indian Pueblo Cultural Center. It's a great opportunity to come learn more about how to participate in the international market. And that registration is open on our website right now. And I also want to invite you to our 26th anniversary American Indigenous Tourism Conference. It's going to be hosted by the Tunica Biloxi Tribe at the Paragon Casino Resort, October 28th through the 31st in Marksville, Louisiana. October 28th through the 31st. Make sure you're there. It's a great time to network with colleagues from all across the country, but more importantly, learn from your peers, learn what other Native nations and communities are doing in cultural tourism. And again, visit our website at AIANTA.org to learn more about our other educational program offerings. Our webinars are on there as well as learning tools for all of you. So thank you again for joining us and spending some time with us this morning. We appreciate you all, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.